everybody. Thank you for joining me. My name is Bradley Shaw, and tonight on Between the Covers, I'm talking to author Samuel Ridley, who's the author of Cara's Law. Good evening, Samuel. How are you?
Good evening, Brad. I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. So tell everybody watching, what are they going to expect when they get to read this book for the first time, Cara's Law?
Hopefully they don't have expectations. I tried to write it with the idea that, as in the family law system, no one really knows anything about it until you're in there. And every entity that you meet, every lawyer, barrister, right through to the judge and the final hearing, it's a surprise around every corner. So if I've managed to pull that off, that's a good day for me.
Well, it is, and it's interesting, the subject, and I'm going to ask because I think everyone's going to think it, to write a story with such an emotional strain and emotional content. Is this an experience, even though it's fiction, is it an experience that you feel, is related around true stories, around events you've seen or experienced or even heard?
So the main storyline is not my own experience. The main storyline, I have been inspired by one of the more, how would you say, unpleasant family law cases that I've come across. So a common law case between the UK, New Zealand and Australia, but it was in the Australian Family Court. And I decided to use that as a bit of a skeleton for my own studies that I've done into the system. And I will admit my own learned experience with small aspects of it. But certainly the bulk of it comes from the real case law that I've read that has thankfully nothing to do with me.
Yeah. Wow. No, so that's also the sad part about the book, as much as it has an aspiration for the characters' resolve and the storyline and the natural arc, but the fact that this system is actually in place and these things happen sometimes, I mean, that's just it is upsetting to think it can be so intensified and so draining and stressful for the people involved, and the bureaucracy, I guess, is the system has to play too, that we don't have that control.
Well, I like that you've ended on the word control, because the family law system as it is, and there's the Family Law Act and the family law courts, but it's the system as a whole that over 20,000 families every year come into contact with. Now, the difference being criminal law is its whole own court, Wrongs Act and torts law, civil law. Now, if you're a business or if you are, in a unfortunate situation where you come into contact with those, well, there's ways out of that. But family law is what everyday mums and dads and kids, people like you, people like me, come into contact with. And if you are the respondent party, well, you don't have a say in it. And if you're the appellant party, well, then something's got you there in the first place that's not very pleasant. And it doesn't matter what walk of life you come from, you don't have any control over what's going to happen next. And a lot of people become disenfranchised, disheartened, and I've tried to capture as much of that as I can without it being an absolute burden to read.
No, it's a very well written book, don't get me wrong. The subject matter is contextually an issue, a heavy issue, yes, and a social issue, but the story itself is very enjoyable, to the sense that you are engaged in the characters. You've written it very with reality and emotion. We're very proud to be able to be helping you with getting the publication and the work out there. But the thing is that it just dumbfounds me, I guess, that families have to suffer this. I mean, a breakup is hard in any sense, but the poor, and I guess the biggest issue is always the children. I mean, it's a cliche, but it is. It's the children that are going to be torn between this arbitrary way of their family being torn apart in the courts, and mum and dad's having to try to rationalize or protect the whole story or flow for the kids. I mean, and you've done that well in the book, is to involve and engage that trauma as well.
Thank you.
So in writing the book, you said yourself you had exposure to the stories and the experiences, but in writing it, did you find the emotional pull of yourself involved in the story? Like when you were writing, you felt expressive or engaged in the events happening, as opposed to trying to be the neutral, objective writer? I mean, you would have, tell us about the writing process for you.
Certainly. So I sat down to write a book on historical fiction about a cat in New Zealand, and this is what I ended up with because I just couldn't. I know, but I couldn't write about anything else until I got this off my chest. So that's about as much.
So obviously got
everything that was going on for myself. I wanted to put in this book without putting it in the book. So all of the, like I said, learned experience, all of the heart is there.
Yeah.
The only little scrap of myself and my learned experience that you'll see in there is towards the end, where one of the sort of minor characters has a bit of an outburst and says a few things that are on my mind. But certainly that's just to give a whole other perspective, because the human element of the family law system, we're all human beings, we're all individuals, and we all experience and feel things differently. And that can be from the mother who is fighting for her life and the lives of her kids. It could be from the father who is doing the same thing. It could also be the lawyer who knows they're getting paid $500 an hour and wants to drag this thing out for 6 years.
No.
On that point, the only thing I'll say that I think is unrealistic about my portrayal of the family law system in its current state, and this isn't a spoiler, but the storyline goes over about 12 months. And if you get in and out of our family law system in 12 months, you're pretty lucky.
Yeah, that's pretty effective, but it's pretty intense too. Like you cram a lot into that experience of the book, and that's I guess that's the reality of the timeline in a way of making the story flow. Like because it could be quite a saga if you dragged it out for that 3 years, and heaven forbid. The thing that's challenging in any situation like that is, I gather, the restarting. Like if you're burdened by this grievance for 3 years, like generally most people try to end and want to move on and get started and closure and all those elements, but you don't have that. And to go for 3 years, I mean, you can't process or evaluate or even start your life. And the kids are in another whole place again from their growth, time. So the whole process is very, very painful. Yeah,
it horrible. Is, and the pain felt differently by all of my characters. There's well-meaning characters. There are insidious characters. And there's a secret character in it that I'm more than happy to share. It's the family law system. So in a way, I tried to make that the main character without doing so. So there's a few very human, flawed elements, which is quite real to the system that 20,000 families in Australia face every year.
Wow. And have you had people only read this and just proof it or give you any feedback? What has the reactions been to it initially?
Yeah, of course. I had a couple of lawyer friends go over it, and they said from a legal point of view, it's airtight, which is great. Wow. In terms of the protocols and the processes.
Well, no, it's not great. That's awful. It shouldn't be that way.
I think if you were reading about a medieval battle and somebody told you that it was accurate, well, I think that'd be the same. No. Okay, it's great because it's awful.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I've also had 2 or 3 other people that have read it either in full or in part. And these are people that have been through the system as well. And they've certainly ticked a few boxes where they've said, oh my God, that's me. Yeah. You've written about that person I met or that judge that said this. So again, that humanity and that heart, I've tried to hopefully get it in there.
Good. No, you've done well. No, it's really good. So when did you write the book? When you sat down, you said you had to write it. Did you write it with the knowledge of wanting to publish, or did you just write it in the hope that just venting it, just thinking, okay, if it comes something, I will do it? Or did you the goal was to get it out there and really share this story to the mass?
The goal, if we're talking about goals, it's to reform the family law system. And if this in any way could get out there and get published, well, that was the goal, certainly. But as I said, I set out to write a historical fiction novel. And I ended up having to get this off my chest, having to get it out of here and onto paper, almost like I understand why people journal now, put it that way. But I submitted it to Shoreline Publishing. I was very lucky that you took the time and thought it was worth putting your time into. And I'm very, very grateful. And I really, really hope, and I feel very lucky, but I do hope that it can go a little bit further. And maybe change a few opinions in Canberra, maybe get a bit more inertia going in some family law reform, so that those kids that we've mentioned a few times have a whole better future than.
Well, I think there's societies and activists that'll embrace this as well, and then really identify it to the fact that it's a brave book in a way to confront some of those issues you put in it, and it's got a strong voice, and I think it can marry up to that. And even though work of fiction, the dynamic is truth of it. Like, that's the thing that you've got to understand. I think, anyone watching this, you have to understand it is a fiction, but it's got truth, and that's what you want to focus on.
I think, was it Ian Fleming that said everything I write has an element in truth? I might be paraphrasing.
No, but absolutely, it's true. All fiction is truth in a way. It all has that stem. But I mean, this is really confronting, and you did really well with it. So, with that in mind, like, what was the hardest part for you to write in this book? Like, what would you found the most challenging of this sort of story?
What to leave out. So,
to cut it, that's the hard part.
Yeah, so there's a lot on the cutting room floor. There's a lot of, so the family law system gives birth to an absolute plethora of institutions, professions, social groups. If I could put them all in there, this thing would have been a trilogy at a minimum. It really was what to leave out. So there's some stuff in there where I'll just mention, and I'll give the example, child support. Yeah. I don't go into it. But that's a whole element of itself. It certainly is. And
it's crazy.
There's flaws there, and there's pros and cons, but it was what to leave out. And because there's so many tragic case laws to draw upon, again, I had to pick one, and I picked one of the worst ones that I could come across, and tried to humanize it a little bit.
No, I gotta say it again. It's well, you've done well. It's a very well done book. So just tell us, like, what's coming up for you then? So are we going to get to see the cat in the boat, and the whole historical fiction, or what's the next project? What are you gonna go into? Some other campaign, or what do you feel? You got the bug for writing? I guess this is your first book. So what are you planning now?
Well, we'll see how this one goes. I'm definitely going to write more books, whether they reach the shelves or not, that's a bonus.
That's good. Just keep writing. That's the key.
I'm pretty infatuated with historical fiction, and I like to put a social element on it. So as odd as the cat on the island book sounds, it's a true story, and it's a work in progress. But at the same time, I did commence a sequel to this book. Which I sort of thought, I'll let that mature by itself for a little while, and we'll see.
Child support, right?
And it's this long.
It's a biblical book.
Yes, indeed.
No, that's good. That's good. So having done that, having had that first bug of writing, how did you find the process and art, the crafting of writing, like understanding how a book and story is told? Did you do, I guess, some learning or researching as you did it, or did you just write and thought I'll create the craft, I'll craft it afterwards? How was the process for you?
Well, it was, I'd like to think it was inventive. I wrote, I did a, what would you call it, skeleton of the chapters and where I want to be here, and here. And it looks nothing like that.
It went all over that way and that way.
Certainly. And it's why with this novel, it should be pretty obvious to the reader that I used a relationship as a time scale, as opposed to, like we mentioned, it could have gone over 3 or 6 years, like a lot of cases do. I picked about 12 months, and I thought I'll use a relationship, a romance, a new one blossoming to meet those time scales. You're going to move in at 3 months, you're going to do this at 6 months, 9 months, that sort of thing. So I had to get creative with the way I was telling the story and the structure. But in terms of, I was pretty lucky, and I'll sort of give myself a little bit of creative credit here. Each chapter is named after an institution, and that let me really hone in on one topic at a time whilst carrying the greater story forward. So I had to try and make it a little bit easier on myself as a first-time author.
Good. No, that's awesome. Did you set a lot of time aside? Did it take you long? What was your timeline with writing like?
The first lockdown of COVID-19, actually. So I took a month off work to look after the little one, And I'd write, she'd play, or I'd put her to bed and I'd write. And I got the lion's share done in about 6 weeks. But then it was that honing and that revising and that returning to it, a little bit of editing, etc. But certainly it was a big chunk of my 2020.
Good. Wow. Yeah, that's good. I mean, you had the time to give it that discipline. That's the challenge for a lot of writers, particularly new writers who are trying to learn a craft as well as tell a story in the right way. You had time to think and to plan and to work with it, which is great. So now getting back into it's not something, it intrigues me, I guess, the political element of this story, in the sense that you think divorce has increased by 50% over the last 20 years, 25 years, in the sense that the relationships don't seem to have stability they used to. We think of our generations before where grandparents were together for 80 years. Nowadays, it seems like, and as you said, the numbers are high, that everybody seems to be breaking up, to be really just dissolving marriages very quickly, sometimes easily. But yet, on other levels, why do you think they're going through this system? Like, why wouldn't you put more of that energy into making a marriage work than putting yourself through this task, this recourse, this pain for years? I mean, surely the marriage wouldn't be even half as bad as that process alone. Do you have a philosophy? Do you have an objective on that? Like, do you think to yourself, like when you're writing and researching, you think, why would people go through this process? I mean, I don't know. I know there's a lot of stories of loveless marriages, but I don't know. I just find it dumbfounds me.
There's a Blink-182 song called "Stay Together for the Kids" that I think covers exactly what you've just said. Is it not easier? Is it not better to just stay? My answer is no, and I love Blink-182, but it's a lot easier. It's a lot healthier. To feel lonely when you're alone than to feel lonely when you're in a relationship you don't want to be in. So I understand why people end up separated. I completely do. I don't understand why people end up in the family law system. You're going to reach a point where you're going to end up sitting down and talking. And why don't you just do that at the start?
Well, exactly. Yeah.
And one of the reasons might be those family lawyers out there that are on the $500 an hour. Well, they don't want you to do that.
They manipulate you. Yeah.
The best advice could be, hey, don't do this. Sit down and talk. But they're not going to, a bartender's not going to kick you out at happy hour because you're there spending money. And that's also why a lot of these institutions we've mentioned are against the family law reforms from the ALRC. There's 60 recommendations in this document. It keeps getting knocked back. And who's knocking it back? It's the people earning money. So there's all kinds of ways that everyday people, normal families, end up in this system. And we need that reform. And we need it now.
It is a pity. I mean, it is a system that everything of a system has errors, it has faults, and of course, it's the people that run it, as you say, sometimes that are not constructing it the right way as well. So it depends on the interest invested in people who are involved. So, but like I said, this book's going to add a lot of thought. It's going to add a lot of perspectives to people that maybe have either gone through it or know people have gone through it. And I think they'll have a better understanding and appreciation of that effort as well. But also, I think fired up, as you say, activists against it will certainly step up. So very good job. Well done. To everybody watching, if I can just say, please grab a copy of Samuel's book, CARA'S Law. It's available in November. Books everywhere books are sold. You can go to your local bookshops. We do appreciate you supporting local businesses. That's really important for the industry as well. Retail needs your help. But please grab a copy of this book. Get it for Christmas gifts and so forth. And hello, there's a beautiful little family member and she's gone. So
try that one.
That's right. So just think of that like Samuel's book, and you better grab it before it's gone, because I think this book's going to sell like hotcakes. It's a really good book. Thank you, Samuel, for spending your time with us tonight and for writing this book. So
thank you for having me. It's been great.
No worries. Well, look, we'll hopefully see many more books coming from you in the future. But for this one, I do, wish everybody to grab it, have enjoyment from it, and understanding of it too. Thank you, Samuel, and have a good night. And we will talk again soon. Now.